Welcome to the HAYVN Hubcast, a place to learn what business leaders, owners, and professionals are doing to navigate and grow in today's market. Hear from industry experts on everything from marketing, leadership, financing, and more. Brought to you by HAYVN, a co-working space where you can connect, create, and get stuff done.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the HAYVN Hubcast. I am very excited and almost overdue to be talking with today's guest, Anne Murray, who is the co-founder of Schedulete. Welcome, Anne.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We say co-founder, Anne, because your other founder is your daughter, Alexa, and unfortunately she couldn't be with us today, but I'm really excited to dive in and talk to you about kind of founding a business with a mother-daughter combination. But first, can you tell our listeners what Schedulete is and does?
Schedulete is a platform that allows college coaches to create and manage their game schedule. And the idea for this came from Alexa. She was a college athlete, and her coach said to her, scheduling is really hard. It's done with email and text messaging and phone calls, and I get so many other requests through my inbox that it's a very frustrating process. And you're an engineer. Could you help me think of a solution? So we did some research and figured out that this, in fact, is a pain point for a lot of coaches. And that's what gave us the idea to launch Schedulete.
And how long ago was that in terms of, an inkling or, because I know I've known about you for a couple of years, but I forget when you started.
Yes. So this was in early 2020 when she was in her senior year at Penn. She had the opportunity to take an engineering entrepreneurship class. And when you enter that class, you have to come with a business idea. So her coach had mentioned this to her before, and she said, I really don't have the bandwidth. And then all of a sudden there was this opportunity. So she took that class as her capstone project. And we went through the whole process, just like an incubator, with the culmination of a pitch event at the end. And we worked on it together. I actually went to class with her, and it was nice to be back in college. We'd meet every week for homework, and so that was very exciting. And then after graduation, kind of took a pause and thought, this is really something that is interesting. And we did interview a lot of coaches, and it was a pain point. And we thought, let's give it a shot. So we formed our company in November of 2020 and got to work on interviewing developers and coming up with what we call our first version, our MVP, minimal viable product. And a year later, went to our first coaches convention. We went to the men's lacrosse and the women's field hockey college coaches convention with a somewhat rudimentary version of the software and got a lot of feedback. We had identified a pain point, and information that came out of there, we took back to our development team and redesigned the software, focusing on some of the things that had kind of bubbled up with the coaches. Went back a year later and announced our first partnership with those coaches. And they are now using that platform, scheduling games, and it's just really exciting.
Fantastic. I want to come back to present tense, but let's go backwards for a second. You said Alexa took the entrepreneurship or engineering and entrepreneurship class. You were going to class. Did they walk you through what to expect on this journey? Was it simulated or was it nothing like anything you actually experienced? I'd love to because I'm always curious about what they're teaching in school and is it the same as real life?
This was a real practical hands-on experience. And I think there were 6 or 8 companies. Some have gone on to be funded and have done very well. It was just like we've participated in a few incubators, HAYVN being one of them, and very similar process. What is your customer acquisition cost? What are the metrics that you need to know as a founder? What should your pitch deck look like? What financial information do you need to have? How are you going to market this? How are you going to price your product? What are you going to do for development? What's your go-to-market strategy? All of those things that you go through in your customer journey. We went through that in that class. And so people were very prepared at the end for launching their business. And I believe just about everyone did launch it in the marketplace.
Wow. I love hearing that real practical versus the in theory ivory tower approach, or what they're teaching might be a little outdated. I want to go back even further. You sound like you brought the engineering expertise. When you got your engineering expertise, did you, let's say it was a few years ago, is this your natural background in terms of product engineering, or how did sort of when you got started in your career bring you to where you are now?
So I started my career in the music industry, and the project that was kind of the culminating project before I transitioned into something else was building of a global repertoire database. And we had to, this was the time when the music industry was just starting to digitize. Apple was coming on with iTunes. The music needed to be digitized. The data needed to be digitized. The term metadata was being thrown around for the first time. And so we needed to build a global repertoire system for Universal Music Group to house that information and then to prepare them for the new digital world. So in that role, I acted as a product manager and worked with the engineers. I'd been a user. I knew, I was kind of a subject matter expert in that area. So I transitioned into this product manager role where I worked with the engineers, but I also worked with the users, and we built this together and launched it. And that's a very similar process to what we're doing with Schedulete. Alexa was a systems engineer at Penn and spent the first couple of years of her career in fintech and coding and product management and in that space. So she brings a lot of kind of more current, relevant engineering expertise to our partnership.
I love it. So even though the engineering is the overlap, there's still very different sort of complementary skill sets, which is so important. You talked about this, we were talking earlier, but the partnership in terms of, did you all, before we walk through your journey, did you all sit down and say, like, here are the rules for operating when you sort of decided to go forward with the business? Did you say, well, we did fine as for the class project, let's just see where it goes, or somewhere in between? I'm curious sort of how you established, working rules of operation.
Right. Well, it was fairly straightforward because I have a lot of experience, and set up several companies in the past. And so I kind of brought more of the day-to-day business operations. How are we going to set up as an LLC or a C Corp? Dealing with the lawyers, the accountants, all of that kind of day-to-day business. And she brought the kind of more current engineering experience, as well as how do you do things today, right? And how do you approach things? Having just come out of school, she had seen, a million pitch decks. And she's like, this is what this should look like now. So I found our relationship to be very complementary because we bring different expertise to the business.
And I love that. Like, because I was like, I don't think I could work with my mom. No offense, Mom, if you're listening, but I love that relevant, how that's working. You talked about like the stages that you learned in the class, and now you're kind of walking through them at your pace. But can you talk to people about the point you went from kind of the idea to minimal viable product, and then obviously getting feedback. What was that journey like? I think, what were your biggest surprises in your first year? And in terms of I'll hold that other question. What were your surprises in your first year after you kind of went out of the gate? Did you stay on your timeline? Did it go exactly as projected, or no, we had several pivots?
Well, I would say one thing, even before we went out, was, and this is the beauty of having a co-founder, is I didn't think we were ready to go. I wanted it to be a little bit more perfect, and I wanted to have it a little bit more buttoned up. And she said, no, we have to go. We have to get out there, and it shouldn't be perfect. And this is part of that journey. And so when we first went out with that, it allowed us to get the kind of information that we needed to then go back and iterate on that product. So when you talk about kind of that journey, how did you decide when you were ready or what to do? We came at that from kind of two different points of view, but she was right. And I'm glad we did it and got out there. And if we hadn't done that and established those relationships at that time, we wouldn't be where we are today. And then in terms of kind of our roadmap and our timeline, I think it always takes longer to build something than you anticipate, or at least that's been our experience. In our case, we did a lot of iteration, as the feedback was coming in, rather than saying, this is a complete set of requirements that we want to build. And so I think that stretch that timeline out a little longer. But that was fine because at that time, this was the time from kind of when we first did that MVP until we went back a year later. And I'm glad we took the time that we did, because when we launched it in December and started getting coaches on the platform, we were solving that problem for them. Could it be better? Always, right? You need to continue to listen to your customers. We're scheduling a meeting with a group of coaches in a few weeks now that the lacrosse season is over, and they've been using it for 6 months to get their feedback and to say, how can we continue to provide a product that's useful and relevant for you?
I was going to also sort of ask you about, you mentioned, so the HAYVN Hatch is where we officially met, and you were one of the companies that actually won. But you said you did several kind of different pitching competitions. Did your pitching change? I mean, it sounds like you were clear on your pitch deck, but did feedback in just the pitching of your idea change before you sort of officially went out and started launching this? Were there just lessons from, not necessarily from the coaches, but from the outside world that help you evolve and kind of better craft your narrative?
Yeah, I think that we are so deeply immersed in our subject matter, right? We know a lot about it. And I think the feedback that we got was it was hard we weren't necessarily doing the best job of communicating the story effectively for the audience that listens to pitches. If we communicate our problem to a coach, we're saying this is what we're trying to solve, they're like, I get it right away. And so I think we had to do a lot more work on crafting that narrative of what is the problem that we are trying to solve and how are we going about that. And Alexa actually came up with a really interesting way to describe this, because our platform currently is doing scheduling, and we're looking to expand into other game day logistics and operations once that schedule is set, because that game date kind of kicks off a whole series of tasks that these coaches have to do. So she came up with this example of, imagine the last time that you planned your vacation. You had to book your flights, find a restaurant, figure out how you're going to get there. Did the restaurant meet your dietary restrictions? Did the whole trip meet your budget? Now do that for a family of 40, 10 times a year. That's what a college coach does.
Oh, that just made my stomach hurt. Oh, okay. And you're sort of taking the pain out of that and making it easier and more simple and making people able to communicate, and actually coaches talk to coaches and matching up from what I understand. So I love to hear that. And you mentioned sort of where you were on your journey and your timeline and, different stages of product development and being ready for sort of new functionality. Where in your process does funding or fundraising fit in? I know for every startup, it's different based upon the product, based upon the goals. How is fundraising figuring into your planning and your sort of timeline and goals for your business?
For us specifically right now, we're not fundraising. We wanted our product to be in the market, have that proof of concept, make sure that we have traction and that we found something that resonates. And we're hoping to, generate our initial revenue through subscriptions and advertising and, things like that. Whether or not we're going to look at fundraising later on is kind of up for discussion, but it's a big job. It's a full-time job for someone to do that. And that's just not where we want to dedicate our resources right now. We're really just focused on kind of solving that problem for our coaches. And we believe that if we do that, then that's something that they're going to be willing to and want to pay for, because it's going to make their lives easier. Now, as we look to grow beyond kind of some of our current functionality, there is a lot of spending being done in sports tech broadly. And there are a lot of companies that offer products in our space that are kind of further downstream that have been successful at raising money. And a lot of that has been around acquisition, so that they can buy companies that are tangentially related and then kind of expand the product offering. And so that could potentially be a reason to go out and look for raising funding, because we decide that we want to expand our business in another way.
And I've also, I'm hearing in these days of slightly tighter fundraising markets that strategic partnerships, as you said, whether it's an acquisition or it doesn't have to look like the traditional, like go get the capital, put it in, and have a whole investor layout. Like these strategic partnerships are getting very creative these days.
Yeah, and we are in conversations with several people around that very topic, strategic partnerships, people that are in our space. We have a similar customer base, and we think we can both help each other out. So we are pursuing those and hopefully have some announcements in the next few months.
Very exciting. Well, let's reflect back for just a second in terms of your ideal client is in you're solving pain points for coaches. I just can't, I envision a coach being on the field coaching, right? I shouldn't say it never occurred to me, but I don't know. I just assumed all this magical tactical stuff got taken care of. What's been the response and sort of your relationship with the coaches as you're starting to roll this out?
They're very appreciative of anything that helps them become more efficient. If you look at their inbox, they get emails from their current players, their former players and alums, the recruits that are interested in coming to camp, the school, their families, their other coaches, school administration. I mean, their inboxes are flooded and they are traveling a lot, recruiting. And so they're on the road a lot. And so anything that makes their life more efficient in this process. I mean, I spoke to a coach once who said, I couldn't find the email that, like, where were we with this game? Had we confirmed it? Were we not? I couldn't find it. So I just confirmed it again. And it's those kinds of things that we can avoid. Or right now, we've got coaches at the end of every season, there's a lot of movement and coaches might change jobs, get other offers. And we've had several situations where the prior coach had set up their account on Schedulete. They'd scheduled some games. They had requested games. They then moved on. The new coach comes in and is able to pick right up where that person left off. They don't have to go through their email inbox to figure out kind of where were they with scheduling. Anything that had been completed to date is right there for them. So just those kind of few examples like that show that we have really identified and are solving that pain point for them.
Wow. What a gift for them. Well, we obviously mentioned that HAYVN is what brought us together. I'm not even sure I asked you, how did you hear about HAYVN? How did HAYVN get on your radar screen before you came to the HAYVN Hatch?
I believe initially through Marie Roca. And, so we participated in the first HAYVN launch, which was their incubator. And it was kind of on the tail end of COVID. And Marie and Christine Sullivan were the two facilitators of that program. And, I'd known Marie. And so we applied and were lucky enough to get accepted. And we participated similar to the class that Alexa and I took, a very similar process where each week there was a curriculum and each week we covered a different topic. And it culminated in the HAYVN pitch event that you saw us at. And we are still in touch with a lot of the co-founders in our cohort and continue to kind of help each other out. It's been fantastic. And HAYVN was great because it was our first introduction to the entrepreneurial community in Connecticut. And so we really learned a lot about what Connecticut is doing and how they are supporting entrepreneurs. So that's been great. And then we've, of course, met a lot of people that are very helpful. They call it the HAYVN magic when you're in those offices and there's just the serendipity of, you're grabbing a coffee and you start talking to someone. And there was, someone who introduced me to a college coach that they knew. And you just never know what connections can be made. So that was great. And then it also provided a place for us to host our interns. Last summer, we had 5 interns that worked for us.
Wow.
And they came in, and because of where they lived, HAYVN was actually very centrally located for them. And so they were able to kind of come in and we could utilize the conference rooms as well as just the open space. And that was great for us. It's such a happy, kind of bright, sunny place that it was, they all enjoyed working there.
Yeah, somehow the HAYVN magic tends to always come up in some form or another. I actually just I love Christine and Marie. I just literally interviewed them 2 days ago. So their podcast will air probably before this one, but huge fans. And again, the HAYVN magic. And a shout out to you and Alexa. I feel like you're very emblematic of the sort of women empowered startup team that HAYVN enjoys working with and, kind of being part of your world as well. So we're so glad that HAYVN was a part of it. And if people want to learn more about you, reach out to you or Alexa or learn about Schedulete, what's the best way to connect?
You can find us both on LinkedIn, and we'd love to connect. And we are on Twitter and Instagram at MySchedulete. So please reach out. We'd love to hear from people.
Spell Schedulete, because I know sometimes people don't necessarily read it. I mean, no offense, but how do you spell Schedulete to be correct so we can get it right?
Okay, SCHEDULETE.
Awesome. And thank you so much. I feel like Alexa's been here in spirit. We'll have to get her back. But thank you for this time. Good luck in this next round of kind of like developments as you are. We'll be looking for you and more news soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the HAYVN Hubcast, a place to learn what business leaders and owners are doing to navigate and grow in today's market. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. HAYVN is a co-working space and virtual community located in the heart of Fairfield County, Connecticut. HAYVN is a hub for business owners and professionals to connect, create, and get stuff done. Find out more about the HAYVN community online at hayvn.com. That's HAYVN.com. HAYVN Hubcast is produced by Sound Advice Strategies.